What's something you've done your whole life only to realize recently that everyone else does it completely differently? Story 1. When I lay on my side, I put the opposite hand in the air and just hold it there for a while. It's oddly satisfying. Story 2. A nurse handed me a little cup with 2 pills and a little cup of water. I took my pills and she started laughing. She said something to the effect of, "I've heard people do that, but I've never seen it before." She was astonished. I had put a little bit of water in my mouth, then the pills, then swallowed. I've always sipped some water first, then the pills don't stick to my tongue and I don't taste them. Answer: I've been reading this thread thinking, lol, aren't people strange? But you've reminded me, whenever I have to take a tablet, I take each pill and place it exactly on the back of my tongue and then quickly wash it down with water and then repeat till they're all gone. Can't be doing with them swilling around my mouth, potentially touching my cheek or my teeth. No, thank you. Story 3. I used to think that everyone sat down to put on their pants, but apparently most people just balance on one leg like a flamingo. I have been sitting on the edge of the bed to get dressed my whole life because I thought it was the normal way to avoid falling over. I felt so uncoordinated when I realized my roommates just hop right into them while standing in the middle of the room. Answer: we were specifically taught not to sit on the edge of the bed for any reason. Socks, shoes, pants, getting out of bed. My husband was not taught this, and when we just flipped our mattress, spun it around actually, I now have a depression on the edge that makes me feel as if I'm falling out of bed if I get close to the edge. I am now hinting for a new mattress. Story 4. When going up or down the stairs, I always look at my feet. Just realized recently that not many people do this. Story 5. I thought everyone dried their hands by shaking them like a raccoon that just touched something cursed. Apparently most people use towels. Answer: I do both. Shake them a few times into the sink, then dry with a hand towel. Shaking actually makes a big difference. If I go straight to the towel with wet hands, the towel is often soaked through and will take a very long time to dry. If I do the shake, I remove like 75 of the leftover water, so the hand towel doesn't get nearly as soaked and is dry by the next time I use it. Story 6. I remember being shocked to learn that some people primarily face the shower head. Watching my ex-boyfriend lean forward into the water and let the shampoo run all down his face felt so wrong. Of course, I do turn into the water to wash my face and stuff, but the natural position is to have it hitting my back and leaning my head backward to rinse the shampoo. Story 7. When drawing or writing, the pencil rests on my ring finger, not my index or middle finger, so everything but my pinky is gripping that pencil. Story 8. After taking a bite of a cookie, I lick the edge to keep crumbs from dropping. A friend once laughed and questioned my sanity after witnessing this. Story 9. Rolling up fitted sheets to put them away after laundering. Apparently, a fairly large population has a secret yet complicated method of actually folding them to put them away. I hide the roll within the folded top sheet, which I thought was brilliant. Story 10. I literally just found out that not everyone has a full internal monologue going on 247. I thought everyone had a voice in their head that narrates their day like a movie and discusses choices with itself. When a friend told me her brain is just quiet and full of images, I was so shocked. I genuinely don't understand how people function without a constant mental podcast playing in their skull. Answer: I call these the cues in my head. They never stop. Yep, neurospicy here. The only thing that will eliminate a cue is to finish it. So like a task or an earworm of a song, I'll have to sing it completely in my head and then it's gone. Hello. However, for me to be able to concentrate, I take meds, drink coffee, and if it doesn't put me to sleep, I'll turn on the TV to something I've watched before so I don't really pay attention, or turn on music, and that will occupy some of the cues so I can concentrate. I also learned only recently that not everyone has this going on. My whole life, I just kept wondering how it is so easy for others to do things and never believed people when they said they weren't thinking anything, because the 4-hour diatribe I could produce, but I never have, of what I am thinking would be scattered and probably freak TF out of someone if I did. Throwing away tamales your whole life without knowing what's inside. That's a level of tragedy that not even Shakespeare could have imagined. Poor man and poor tamales. Story 11. I've learned not everyone washes dishes with hot water. Like it has to be scalding hot, darn near burning my skin for me to feel that the dishes are clean. Edit, corrected my typo. So now I am clearly not trying to lecturing the water. Story 12. It took me way too long to realize I was using toilet seat covers incorrectly. I used to tear out the center flap and lay the cover on the seat in a U shape, but the flap is actually meant to hang down into the bowl at the front. Story 13. I whistle by sucking air in. I didn't realize it was strange until I was a teen. Now I can whistle both ways, so can essentially whistle forever because I can breathe at the same time. Story 14. I recently learned that when most people snap their fingers, they use their thumb and their middle fingers. I use my thumb and my ring fingers to snap. Using my thumb and middle finger feels so wrong to me. Answer: thank you. I've been wildly unsuccessful at good snapping my whole life. Just tried it your way and eliminate it. OMG. It's the middle of the night here, and I'm laying in bed just snapping away. My puppy must think I'm insane, but I'm going to be 52 soon, and this is absolutely life-altering info for me. I'm just going to definitively snap a bit more and revel in the sense of achievement. Story 15. Don't know, but I just came here to say YTF is every other comment about standing versus sitting to wipe. Story 16. When I'm blocking my ears with my fingers, I fold the ear flap up and use that. I thought everyone did this, but apparently people just put their fingers in their ear. Story 17. This isn't something I do differently, but more so just an oddity I found out later. I thought everyone's eyes crossed when they were tired, fell asleep, drove for too long, or drank more than 2 drinks. But as it turns out, I have slight strabismus in my right eye. Esotropia. Story 18. Eating pie. I dissect it by taking off the top layer, then eating the filling. Then I eat the bottom crust layer, then the top, then the rounded crust edge piece. Story 19. My ex-husband used to open the tubes of Pillsbury biscuits or crescent rolls with a spoon instead of banging it on the edge of the counter to pop it. Blew his mind when I showed him. Story 20. I lift my jerk right off the seat to wipe. When I found out that people apparently lean over on one cheek to wipe from the side, it suddenly made sense how toilet seats get torqued loose. Answer: same, fellow normal person. Why on earth would you do it any other way? If you just lean forward, lifting your butt cheeks from the seat while still seated on your thighs, you're not going to overbalance. Your butt cheeks are spread, and you have full access so that you can get them properly clean. If you lean sideways, you put stress on your toilet seat bolts. If you stand up, at best, you are smearing poo between your butt cheeks before you start to clean. At worst, you simply aren't getting it properly clean. Story 21. I dislike dripping water outside of the shower, so I have a very particular method for drying off that involves grabbing the towel from the shower, fully drying my upper body inside the shower, then drying one leg completely top to bottom. Then once that foot is dry, stepping outside with that foot, while I then fully drying my other leg while mostly hovering it inside the shower and not putting that foot down outside the shower until it's dry. My ex would only sometimes start drying inside the shower and would invariably step out with at least soaking wet feet and legs, and I swear would go on walkabout before bothering to fully dry off. We're not together anymore. Story 22. When using a hand-cranked can opener, I always crank it counterclockwise. Many times when I've done it clockwise, I'll end up with the lid not breaking off. I've never had that issue doing it counter. Story 23. Grocery shopping. I've always gone aisle by aisle, top to bottom, no plan. Found out most people actually make lists and hit sections strategically. Answer: in college, I once went grocery shopping with a girl in my dorm who made a list and then insisted we go in order of the list to each item's location. This meant walking back and forth because she did not order the list based on location. So we'd go from aisle 1 to aisle 7 back to aisle 2. I also had to explain laundry softener was not the same as laundry detergent. Story 24. When getting out of the shower pool I use my palms to brush water off my arms, chest, legs. Makes it much nicer getting into a towel, as the towel ends up drier, as it doesn't need to absorb as much water. And over my life has saved countless hours of washing, as towels last longer before needing a wash. Story 25. Walking with intent. When I'm walking, I notice a lot of people sort of just meander or walk without paying attention. I purposefully walk around knowing where everyone is around me. I alter my path to avoid people and account for the elderly or disabled. Yet I always see people walking seemingly without purpose. Speaking to people I know has made me realize how seriously I take moving around, LOL. Story 26. Not washing the new bought clothes before wearing them the first time. Some people put them right on or into the closet. Story 27. After I brush my teeth, it takes me a ton of little spits to get it all out of my mouth. Everyone else I've ever seen brush their teeth somehow just gets it all out in one big go. It flabbergasts me every time, like I am physically incapable of doing that. Story 28. I have synesthesia, as well as autism and ADHD. Granted, this particular disorder manifests differently for each individual that has it, but when I was little and announced that I didn't like the number 6 because it's a particularly unpleasant shade of orange, everyone looked at me weird. Now my exact manifestation of synesthesia makes my numbers, mathematics, letterzords, and people have colors. Music is colors, patterns, and textures with the beat mentally visualized in a dot-dash pattern akin to Morse code. So when I do math, it's colors and shapes. The best way to describe it is making lines in Tetris is akin to how I make tens in base 10. I need to be able to, in my brain, move the color shapes patterns in such a way to solve the equation. When I hear music, I see the colors the notes make, the pattern the song makes, the dots, dashes the beat makes, and feel the texture of all of it. I can feel that texture as a full body movement as dancing, but more so in my hands and on my upper arms. If you want to know what this is like for me, some instrument synth passages feel like denim or velvet or other fabrics rubbed against your palms or the tricep area of your arms. Others feel like mylar or crinkled plastic bags or PVC or aluminum foil. Some sounds feel like banging an aluminum ladder against a tree with a yard-meter diameter. Thick trunk. Not the sound it would make, but the physical sensation of the strike going through your hands and up your arms. My inner world is full-on sensory overload for a normal person, so I don't usually talk about it because I sound crazy. I've never done any sort of psychedelic substances because I'm already kind of living it. Everything I experience is linked to every sense dialed up to 11. Can you hear that voice in your head right now? I can. And it's saying, oh, another inner monologue. How original. And then it starts humming the soundtrack from the credits. Answer. Wow, your synesthesia is cool. I only see colors for letters and numbers, but I had the same with the number 4 ever since I was a kid. I don't like red, so I always dislike the number 4. Sometimes the number and the color get mixed up in my head, so it'll say blue when I mean 5. In my 20s, I was an avid pool player, and the color number thing got really annoying sometimes. Saying you're going to pot green when you meant 3 and them not being the same is an issue. Story 29. I thought everyone tied their shoes the same way until I saw someone do the bunny ears method. I have always done the loop, swoop, and pull, and I thought the 2-loop version was just for toddlers. Seeing a grown man tie his shoes with bunny ears made me realize there are 2 entirely different camps of shoe tiers, and we never talk about it. Story 30. 9th grade winter break, 2008. Having Christmas dinner, and we're eating pretty much everything like Thanksgiving, but we add tamales to the mix. Before then, I thought tamales were just corn husk with masa in them, and thought whoever invented this food was dumb, and all my life just ate the first layer of masa and tossed the whole tamale away until I seen my cousin eating hers. And she opens the whole thing, and I see chili meat, and I'm like, wait, what, there's meat in tamales? So I grab a tamale, unwrap the whole thing till I get to the center, and finally realize that it had meat the whole time. I tasted it for the first time that Christmas night, and I'm just in shock on how stupid I was to not know about the center of the tamale. The amount of times I threw away my tamales at family functions is just horrendous. The story about Colin and toothpaste is the perfect plot for a strange urban legend. It's creepy, absurd, and makes you spit paranoidly forever. Thanks. Now I'll do it too. Story 31. I need to blow my nose every time after I sneezed. It does not matter if I have a cold or am completely healthy. 2 minutes after I sneeze, my nose is full and needs to be blown. Thought it was the same for everyone, but after I mentioned how annoying that was to a friend, he said he never experienced the same. I then asked around, and apparently I am the only one in my group of friends who has this issue. Story 32. When I read, I sometimes count the number of lines on a page, hoping for it to be a nice even number like 10, 20, 25, etc. It's just like a subconscious thing I keep note of for some reason. Are you left-handed or right-handed? Do you draw? Can you hear thoughts in pictures? Standard questions when people learn about something like aphantasia. Guys, sometimes the brain just works differently, and that's okay. No need to interrogate. Story 33. I drink from bottle straws only through the corners of my mouth. My front teeth have always been particularly sensitive, so I avoid them having to touch liquids head on. Story 34. My dad uses food utensils more like a full hand grip shovel instead of the thumb over between index and middle finger. He does it mostly due to hand and elbow surgeries, making it difficult to turn his wrist. I grew up with a class of 28, so these same few kids had been having meals with me for a while. Someone finally asked why I use a fork like that and prefaced it with, "I've been wanting to ask you this for years, so I learned how to use silverware properly at 17. Story 35. When putting on a bra, I've always clasped it in the front and then twisted it around and pulled it up. I only recently learned that a lot of people simply put it on and clasp it in the back without looking. Story 36. I didn't realize until I was an adult that not everyone can make their eardrums rumble on purpose. Turns out my sister can too. It's convenient to block out loud noises. Only learned via random internet threads and then asking my husband, who had no idea what I was talking about. For reference, Story 37. I am right-handed, and I cut things with the knife in my left hand so I don't have to switch utensils. Well, into my 30s, someone said, "Why don't you cut with your right hand?" After watching everyone in The Anomaly. Answer. Switching your fork into your right hand to take the food to your mouth is pretty much uniquely an American thing. We don't do it in the UK. We just cut with our right hands and convey the food to our mouth with the left hand. I've never seen anyone do the switch the fork from left to right thing Americans do anywhere else in the world, unless it was an American doing it. I don't understand why you do it. What's the point? Why would you bother? You literally have two hands to eat with? Story 38. Whenever I'm bored and standing up for a long time, I balance myself by putting my right hand on my hip. At least my family compares it to a teacup. Story 39. Rinsing my mouth after brushing my teeth. Guess you're supposed to leave the fluoride coating on your teeth to have a better chance at helping to protect against cavities. Answer. I rinsed religiously after I was told by a girl in my swimming team that her older brother had died because he accidentally ate toothpaste. I was about 8 or 9 at the time. She also told me she was called Colleen after him, as he was Colin. She also asked everyone she told not to mention any of this to any of her family, as it would upset them too much. She had an older sister in the next age group, and she would be very upset as she had been very close to him. And of course, no one would say anything to anyone as parents. I never even said anything to my family in case something accidentally got back to her family. It has only been in the past few years that I realized what a load of shoot this all was. But I am having difficulty stopping the habit of a long lifetime. I didn't rinse this morning, but made sure I spat like hell into the sink. R.I.P. Colin. Now that's familiar. My brain sometimes also demands that the number of steps to the elevator be divisible by 3. Otherwise, the whole day is out of whack. I sympathize. Story 40. I have a constant inner monologue going on, including songs which overlap all at once. I'm always thinking about several things at once with a random soundtrack. Apparently this isn't normal, and I've got ADHD or something similar that nobody told me about growing up in the 80s. Story 41. Giving a shoot, especially at work. I used to give not just 110, but 2,000. I made sure everything was done to the letter, fully optimized, thorough as fudge, etc. Recently, I looked back at it all and realized everyone else was giving 10.50 and still got the same wages. I'm never putting in that much effort again unless everyone else is. Story 42. When I wash dishes, I constantly run the water. Although I understand I'm wasting water, but the thought of washing my dishes in water that has washed dirty dishes seems so dirty and unhygienic to me. I was very grossed out to see my husband run a bath for the dishes and proceed to wash everything in the same water. He is no longer allowed to wash dishes. Answer. I rarely have to wash dishes by hand anymore. Yay, dishwasher. But when I do, I'll usually run a nice hot bubble bath on one side of the sink and let them soak for, say, 10 minutes or so. Then come back and drain the water so I can 1, see what I'm working with, and 2, not have to constantly be reaching in the filth water to dig out dishes. Drain the bath sink, then start up a stream of water in the other sink. Rinse the scrub under the stream of water in the clean sink, towel dry if needed, and off they go to the drying rack. Story 43. I thought everyone read recipes start to finish before cooking, like sit there and fully understand every step. Apparently, most people just skim and figure it out as they go. Explains why it takes so long and still somehow mess it up. Story 44. There was a thread on one of the UK subreddits a while ago where everyone was discussing their special techniques for putting a pillow into a pillowcase. My mind was blown because I never considered there was any way other than simply just putting the pillow into the pillowcase. Answer. I once had a brief romance with a French backpacker who'd been working as a housekeeper at a hotel. One day when putting clean sheets on my bed, She watched me put the pillows in the pillowcases and with a little smirk said, "One day I'll show you how to do that properly." She never did. And 15 years later, I still think about it every time I put pillows in the pillowcases, wondering what the proper way to do it is. Story 45. Avoid big spoons. I cannot eat dessert or yogurt unless it's a teaspoon. Apparently, it's an ADHD quirk. Story 46. Apparently, you are supposed to wait, slow down in yellow traffic lights, not take it as a motivation to challenge yourself. Story 47. Not for my whole life, but I haven't worn underwear in over 10 years. And I forget that that's weird to most people. I find wearing it to be uncomfortable. Story 48. Apparently, not everyone pictures words and numbers in colors. In my head, Monday is light green, Tuesday is teal, Wednesday is pink, etc. And the colors stay the same regardless of what language I'm picturing the word in. Story 49. Drinking from a straw. I wrapped my tongue around the straw, which I thought was the normal way to drink, until someone pointed it out as odd. I don't understand how people sip from straws without their tongues utter chaos. Story 50. When I type on the keyboard, I didn't realize you're supposed to use the opposite hand to press the shift button on the other side, and that's why there is 2 shift buttons. I fold my thumb under on my left hand and just reach for it. It's really awkward, but I found out too late, lol. It's been years. Story 51. I'm an idiot and thought you meant pronunciation. I made a rocket ship sound trying to imitate it, and then read the comments and realized I'm fudge stupid. Story 52. I always know where north is, am always thinking about it for every turn, knowing where I am in a building's imaginary map in relation to north at all times. Most people don't know where north is, think that their Google Maps is always correct. Uber drivers don't believe me until they realize that their app was lagging. Indeed, we were facing south, not north as the map told, so the direction they turned was incorrect. I typically don't use Google Maps, since I always know where north is. I just generally remember where home is in relation to north, have a general map of distance traveled in my head. So even if I don't know the streets, I can assume get home just fine. Even when I've traveled to other counties, I quickly get to know how to get around better than local friends. So I'm often left giving directions. Knowing where north is without maps isn't a superpower. It's just living with a built-in compass. While others are looking for a signal, you've already arrived. I'm green with envy. Story 53. I thought everyone stood up to wipe until a weirdly honest conversation in my dorm lounge. I had no idea that sitting down was even an option, or that people found the standing method weird. It is one of those things you never see anyone else do, so you just assume your family's way is the universal standard. Story 54. I used to keep quiet when I was hurt, thinking that's what strong people do. Took me years to realize that speaking up is the real strength. Story 55. Eating a fried egg. I cut around the yolk to eat the white separately. I then take the yolk, unpopped, and stick the whole thing in my mouth. The feeling of it oozing is second to none. I get a lot of harmful behavior for doing this. Story 56. I would have bet 100 that everyone on earth enters from the back of the shower, but evidently I've found out some people enter from the shower head side and get water everywhere. Story 57. I never touch my lips to a soda can or bottle. I just kind of bend back and pour it. I'm not sure why I do this. Story 58. I've always assumed everyone overthinks everything the way I do. Finding out that some people are just calm was shocking, lol. Story 59. Anytime I see a license plate, I try to make some kind of correlation out of it. Example, LHH 2795, 279, 527. So now all the numbers are somehow related. I do this with the time too. Story 60. Christmas. My wife and I are now learning while setting up Christmas for our kids just how different our childhood Christmas traditions were. Story 61. Most people, when counting with their fingers, start with the pointer finger or thumb and work toward their pinky finger. I start with my pinky finger and work the other way. I also start with my left hand despite being right-handed. Learned eventually that no one has a clue what you mean when you hold up just your pinky finger and ask for one of anything, so corrected myself to ask for one with just the pointer finger. However, two is still my pinky finger and my ring finger, not the peace sign. Story 62. I once watched a documentary on TV where monkeys were eating bananas. To my surprise, they open them from the black tip. They just pinch it and peel it open. An amazing technique. Meanwhile, most humans attack the banana from the stem. People freak out when they see me opening a banana this way. But the result? The cleanest peel and zero banana damage. Story 63. Drinking from bottles without wrapping my lips all the way around it. I don't understand how people drink like that. With no air hole, you just create a vacuum. Story 64. Everyone is mildly horrified when they notice me doing this, but I didn't really realize it was weird until I was in my 20s. I hold the computer mouse at an angle. Instead of my hand wrist being straightly aligned with the mouse, I lean the base of my hand off to the side, not fully horizontal, just kind of at a 4 p.m. to 11 p.m. angle, if that makes sense, so that it rests toward the side of the mouse, and therefore I use my pointer middle fingers to click from an angle. I have done this my whole life and find it so much more comfortable. It feels like there is more support on my wrist, and the tougher side of my arm is against the table rather than having the tender underside of my arm rubbing against. It's weird, and I guess no computer teacher or otherwise ever corrected me. Holding the mouse at an angle, it's genius. It's almost like holding a spoon differently than you're taught. The main thing is that it's comfortable, and anyone who looks askance at it just hasn't tried it. Story 65. Putting water on my toothpaste toothbrush before I brush my teeth. I can't stand brushing with a dry toothbrush. Story 66. I do my bra up at the front and spin it around. I am too uncoordinated to put it on and clasp it at the back. Apparently, most women do it the hard way. Story 67. Not something I do intentionally, but I recently found out not everyone's nipples get diamond hard literally every time they sneeze. Huh? I thought it was a typical human body thing. Then recently I joked about the phenomenon to a friend, and they were so confused, and I was confused by their confusion, so I pulled other loved ones. And that's how I found out it seemingly only happens to me. WTF, why is this my mutant superpower? Story 68. I used to take every item of clothing off to go for a poo. I think when I was little, I was scared of getting poo on my clothes, so my parents just rolled with it and never told me otherwise. Shocked my grandparents a couple times when they took me out as a young child. Thought it was pretty normal until I was about 10, 11 years old or so, when at a sleepover. Walked in fully clothed, walked out with no socks, on which led everyone to ask questions. I finally found out it was not normal. These days I'm fairly normal, but treat myself every now and again to either a top-off or all-off poo. Story 69. After reading an article about aphantasia, my mind was blown that people can see things in their head. Answer: never heard of that until now. I have so many questions, if it's okay to ask, such as, are you a lefty or righty or both? Are you auditory, visual, or kinetic? What's your level of interest in creating artwork or music? What's your profession and or passion? Just curious if there's some commonality among those things and the aphantasia. That's really interesting because from what I've learned in the past, the deaf community sees everything in images, dreaming, versus how the hearing community will see, but also hear in dreams. Do you dream? I'm so visual that hearing numbers comes with individual and distinct colorful imagery. LOL, I seriously had no idea it was different for everyone. Just imagine something relaxing, says the therapist. And your mind responds, imagine what? A blank sheet of paper? Realizing that you have aphantasia is like finding out that everyone around you can see ultraviolet light, but you can't. You panic quietly, but then you get used to it. Story 70. My whole life I've always been sneezing 3 times. Every time. I don't just do 1 or 2. It's always exactly 3, except the rare occasion. I thought everyone sneezed in 3s, hence the saying of good things coming in 3s or whatever. That's where I thought it came from. Story 71. Saw a video yesterday about how when most people drink from a cup, they pour the water into their mouth, but she said she sucked the water out. I too sucked the water out and never thought anything of it until that video. Story 72. Doing mental math for tips and splits. I always rounded in my head in a weird step-by-step way, then found out most people just estimate fast and move on. I still get the same answer. It just takes me longer. Felt oddly proud and mildly inefficient at the same time. Curious how many other people have their own little math rituals. Story 73. I count steps while going upstairs or downstairs. My mom would do this with me when I was little, and I just never stopped. Story 74. I can raise my eyebrows individually, and the few times I met people who couldn't do it, I thought they were the outliers. As years go by and I meet more and more people who can't do it, I realize maybe I'm the outlier. Story 75. I am one of those people that puts the little slash through their 7s. I have been doing it forever, and doing it the regular way seems weird. Story 76. I eat burgers, sandwiches, and round Debbie cakes around the edges like a circle, and then enjoy the middle. Story 77. I wouldn't say my whole life, but when I write the number 8, I start from the center instead of the top, and it's just so satisfying to do it that way. When I used to write from the top part would be too straight, and the end stroke would also be too straight, so it looked like a weird S. Now my 8s have more symmetry. Story 78. For some 26 years, I always thought when someone said to picture something in your mind, they meant metaphorically. But a couple of years ago, I read about aphantasia and realized I'm a weirdo, and most people can actually picture things in their mind. I have some issues with anxiety, and when told by people to just picture things that make me happy, relaxed, I never thought they were being literal until now. Now I know why that never helped me calm down. I am literally incapable of picturing things in my head. It's also very difficult to hear things in my head, aside from my internal voice, except for music and singing. I don't know if that's related, but no one I've spoken to seems to understand. I don't have a great audiovisual memory, but I remember things in other ways that I can't quite understand or explain. If I hadn't stumbled across an article about it on Reddit, I never would have realized I was different. Of course, I didn't just take Reddit's word for it. I did actual research also. Does anyone else understand what I'm saying? When someone says that the number is an unpleasant orange, and I just see the number, I feel like I have black and white vision in a world of HD colors. I'm jealous, honestly. Story 79. Writing, imagine a very old witch with twisted hands signing a contract to increase her powers at the cost of her soul. That's how I hold a pen. Didn't realize it was weird until I got an office job and had to take notes at meetings. Story 80. I used to wipe down cutlery down before I used it. It's a habit I developed as a small kid BC. My grandparents refused to use more than a drop of dish soap for the whole time they were washing dishes. So everything was always horribly greasy and a sensory nightmare. It went on as I started renting rooms in Uni BC. People don't know how to do dishes properly. When I started living on my own, that kind of stopped, but I just use perhaps an ungodly amount of dish soap, but everything is squeaky clean, and it doesn't really happen anymore with my friends since they all understand how to properly wash dishes too. Story 81. Storing duvet covers inside out and putting them on the duvet by pinching the outside corners to the duvet and cover together, then turning the whole thing right side out over the duvet. I can't believe people try and stuff a duvet into a duvet cover. Takes forever. Story 82. Taking a piss before getting in the bath or shower. I just piss while I'm in there. Saves toilet paper and flushing. Story 83. Love people. No one loves or cares as deeply for me as I do for them, and I've come to realize that's just the way it will always be. Story 84. When making a quick note in the back of my hand, I always wrote it on the palm side. Only when I was about 30 did I clock that everyone else was writing on the other side, which was far easier to write on and didn't get smudged so easily. Writing this had made me realize that nobody writes anything on either side of their hand now, thanks to phones, I guess. Story 85. Shuffling a deck of cards. I have my fingers on top and thumbs on bottom. Everyone I see uses their thumbs on top. Story 86. So when I sit down on the ground cross-legged, I sit in lotus position naturally. I didn't know what this was, but I was always the only person who had their feet up, not under my knees. Someone would always notice and react, and everyone would stare. I didn't know yoga or see anyone else do this until I was an adult. Story 87. I put on one sock, then the shoe, then the other sock, and then that shoe. I am 54 and my kids just noticed and said I was weird. I can live with that. Story 88. So not as crazy as other things, but a lifelong chef was amazed at how I cut bell peppers. I just follow the lines and go from there instead of chopping off the top and bottom like is normal apparently. Story 89. Am a male and I go in between my legs to wipe my jerk. And apparently wiping from top of the crack towards my balls is weird as well. Story 90. Not my whole life, but I got two brothers. So growing up, my mom would get the pizzas cut into 16 slices to just avoid the drama of us fighting over a slice. We're about to take one bite out and be done. I'm in math class in elementary school, and my teacher asks, okay, how many slices come in a pizza? I show my hand up high FF, stoked to answer this question I know is right. 16 class burst out laughing. Teacher might as well hit me with a Billy Madison line. Story 91. When I was a little kid, my Jewish mother would make us tomato soup and a cheese sandwich on cold, rainy days. The only thing is it was a cream cheese sandwich. I thought everyone did that, and one day, 25 years later, it came up at work in the U.S. D.C. area. When I said cream cheese sandwich instead of grilled cheese sandwich, it was a record scratch moment. I got 8 people saying to me, WTF? Even a guy from Honduras and a man from a strict Muslim household said, dude, it's supposed to be tomato soup and a grilled cheese sandwich. Who the hell eats cream cheese with tomato soup? I felt like such a weirdo. Story 92. At the end of my shower, after I shut off the water, I use my hands like a squeegee and remove as much water as possible from my skin before I leave the shower and dry off with a towel. Story 93. After I'm done shoot, I stand slightly, just lift my cheeks off the seat really, and then turn and lower myself into a full squat position in front of the toilet, facing it. I then proceed to wipe. Can't get in there properly when I'm on the throne. As a bonus, I get a nice view of my work. Story 94. I've always brushed my teeth with cold waters. When I got together with my BAF, I learned he used hot water. I was mind blown. LOL. Story 95. For almost 30 years, I stood up to wipe my jerk. I only found out it was weird when my wife, we were only dating at the time, saw me do it. I assume when I was potty training as a kid, my parents would have me stand so they could wipe me. Then I just continued on like that. Story 96. I put my t-shirts on by putting my head in first and then my arms. But my wife thinks it is crazy that I don't put my arms first and then my head. I never even considered how I put shirts on until now. Story 97. I recently offered coffee to some guests and learned the hard way that my coffee is disgustingly strong. I thought we all use twice the amount of grounds it says to use on the can. Story 98. Tying my shoes, which I tie like bow ties because I never learned how to tie them the other way, making a loop or something. My ex-GF noted that I tie my shoes like a child, but no one taught me and my way works fine. Story 99. Am right-handed. I hold my fork with my right hand and knife with left hand. I'm always being told I'm holding them the wrong way. I've tried doing it the correct way, but I cannot use the knife like that, Lord. Story 100. Think, Imaudid, I genuinely love people strangers. I genuinely wish others well. I can't tell you how many people try to unmask me. It just sends me into a PTSD trigger, and nobody understands me. It's pretty lonely. Story 101. Once I finish a packet of potato chips, I will fold the packet lengthways into a narrow strip, which I will then use to make a knot that tidies the packet away. Extra satisfaction if I can get 2 knots. No one outside my immediate family seems to do this. Story 102. My career. Everyone in my industry went to college and has degrees 4 years. I got 1 certification 3 months. I actually make more than anyone in my job title because I started working way before anyone else. Story 103. Putting peanut butter on one piece of bread and jelly on the other. I always used to put both on one side of the bread. Story 104. When tying shoelaces, I used 2 loops. Never really got the hang of the 1 loop method as a kid, so still double looping as an adult lol. Story 105. I start my S's 5s from the bottom. Apparently everyone else was taught to start from the top. People always point it out when they watch me write. Story 106. As a 45-year-old man, I realized people usually stand facing away from the shower to rinse their hair when my girlfriend laughed at me. Story 107. I used to half crack aluminum soda cans and just squeeze the can, suck the can. Did that for my entire life until I was late teens. Sometimes the can would break and I would suck the side, IDK. If I full open the can, I just down the whole thing instantly, within maybe 6 sips. I could drink a 500 ml bottle of water in a few big gulps on hot summer days. Story 108. Tying shoes is way easier by knotting 2 bunny ears rather than the wrap X 2 times and pull through method. I think I could have passed that skill in kindergarten quicker had I been taught the former. Story 109. I start my 6 from the middle of it. Always get people telling me they've never seen that and they start from the top. Story 110. I'm definitely not the only one who does this, but I have literally never used the right-hand shift key on a computer keyboard. For years, I didn't even notice it was there, let alone realize you were supposed to use it to capitalize letters on the left side. Story 111. I make a wall of mashed potato to separate gravy and meat. I used to make a mashed potato well, but got told that was weird. Story 112. Didn't find this out recently, but I freeze my food waste. We have to recycle everything where I live, including food waste, which goes into a separate bin bag. My mother used to keep it in a storage room when I was little, but in the summer it would get nasty real quick. Little flies everywhere. Juices flowing out. I just have the bag in a drawer in the freezer. When the bag is full, I put it outside on pickup day. I have yet to meet a person in my country who does the same. Story 113. I always thought you were supposed to scrub your nails under running water after washing your hands. Turns out most people just wipe them on a towel. Feels weird realizing I've been doing the extra 30 seconds of work my whole life for nothing. Story 114. How I hold my pen stencils when I write. I hold it almost like a fist and often ends up with my hand hurting after writing for a few minutes. Story 115. was in basic training. Our barracks latrine was just one big bay. Toilets had no walls between them, so you looked directly at the guy across from you. Needless to say, there was a guy that took a shoot by wrapping his hand in toilet paper. Then he caught every individual turd in his hand, dropped it, rewrapped his hand to catch the next turd. Clearly, I have been taking shoot incorrectly my entire life. Story 116. I just found out that I have raphantasia. I don't see anything in my mind's eye, and it's still taking a lot of effort to cope with, especially because I became a creative professional despite having it. Story 117. I hold a pencil, like a cigarette, between my index and middle finger, resting on the web between my thumb and index finger. Story 118. For the first 4 decades of my life, I wiped my butt by standing up and reaching around. But then in a movie, I saw a man stay seated and wipe from the front. Wow, so much cleaner. Story 119. I wear my watch on my right wrist. I don't know why the left wrist is the correct one, but it has never felt natural for me to look at my left wrist or turn my left hand upward to glance there for a watch. I'm a righty, so I get that having a watch on the hand you write with might feel clunky underneath, but I have never been bothered by it. The thought alone of something around my left wrist is way more uncomfortable. Story 120. My mom was physically disabled, so I was used to taking care of her as she took care of me. If we would play, it would always be something really gentle or doing something like Wii Sports because moving the controller is easier than pushing a button. I saw my friends roughhouse with their mom one day, and I got scared they would severely hurt their mom. Then I realized I'm the different one because my mom could never physically do that. She had screws in her hands and feet to keep her joints aligned from severe arthritis and fake wrists that would sometimes dislocate from her tendons tightening. She was always such a happy person despite all of it, and I miss her so much. Story 121. I'm a guy that sits on the toilet on the seat to pee. It's a seat and standing to pee should only be in urinals. Story 122. I learned at age 37 that I write weird. I actually cross my thumb over my index finger as I use a pen when everyone holds it without fingers touching. I still write that way, and it freaks people out. Story 123. Fully washing the dishes by hand with soap and then putting them in the dishwasher to be sanitized. I never understood when someone complained about their dishwasher stinking. There are psychos that just good and all stick dishes in there. Literally crazy. Story 124. Well, I recently learned what mewing is, and I apparently have always naturally done it without knowing it wasn't what everyone did. I rest my tongue pressed to the roof of my mouth and have done so for as long as I can remember. I guess other people have their tongue rest at the bottom of their mouth. Story 125. I always automatically hold my breath walking upstairs and then a few stairs in, have to remind myself to breathe. Story 126. So apparently eating a pomegranate wrong? My whole life I would suck the juice off the pomegranate seeds and spit out the seed inside. My GF just chews and swallows the actual seeds. Story 127. Process the world, information, as well as my thoughts and emotions differently than most others. Didn't understand how I was wired differently until my very late 20s. Now in my 30s and still grappling with my oddities and how to function normally. I also thought it was normal to push through the type of physical pain and fatigue I have felt since a young age in my joints. I thought everyone's back and ankles hurt like mine, even as a teenager and very young adult. Turns out it was much more than a little normal back and joint pain. Story 128. I recently discovered that you're not supposed to rinse your mouth with water after brushing your teeth. Apparently, you're just supposed to spit the toothpaste out and go. I have always rinsed after brushing. Story 129. Letting dishes air dry. Then I moved to Europe and found out that everyone else uses a towel to dry them off. Story 130. Brushing my teeth with hot water. I am 46, but had only found out a few years ago that everyone else uses cold water. Story 131. Sing Fairy Tale of New York. Honestly thought it was when the band finished playing, they held up the mall. Story 132. I used to wipe standing up. Thought that was just how you did it. Found out last year I've been living a lie. My whole life is a sham. Story 133. Not something I actively do, but my eyes water when I yawn. If I'm really tired and doing it a lot, I'll have full-on tears running down my face. It's actually really annoying, but has led to a lot of funny "what's wrong? I'm just really tired" conversations over the years. No one else I've ever talked to outside of my family has had this issue. Story 134. I learned how to tie knots about 20 years ago. thereby making rope a useful tool for myself. I have learned many knots over the years. There are a lot of bullshit knots out there that no one needs. Unfortunately, it's a far rarer skill than it should be. Imagine having a socket wrench with no sockets, and every time you see a bolt or nut, you just hammer it with your socket wrench. That's how I view most people's attempts at using rope. Story 135. Hold a pencil, apparently. I'm a lateral quadrupod. I only say this because my coworkers and BF have all roasted the way I hold my pencils and forks. Story 136. I've always tied my shoelaces with the bunny ears method. YK make 2 loops and tie them like a bow. Thought it was the only way. Then last year, a friend showed me the proper knot where you loop one lace around the other and pull through. Turns out it's stronger and doesn't come undone as easily. Been doing it wrong for my entire life. I think it's too late now. I kind of like my bunny ears. Story 137. Learned in my 20s that most people self-care laying on their back, flabbergasted both me and everyone else in the room. Story 138. It's correctly pronounced in voice, not like I have pronounced it with an ersatz French accent since birth, in voice. Story 139. Brushing my teeth in the shower while taking a bath. I thought everything did it this way because it saves time. But no, it is something only my family does, I guess. Story 140. Write the letters of the alphabet upside down. I am often told that I have incredibly neat writing, but people can't understand how I ended up learning to write my letters in the opposite direction to what is taught in school. Story 141. Math, particularly multiplication and division in my head. I was surprised to learn that people cannot multiply and/or divide 2- and 3-digit numbers in their head. Story 142. I always ate my Avos in a cup mixed with milk and sugar, like a smoothie. Until I did it at work and someone made a comment that it was disgusting. I ignored that meanie and kept on eating. Story 143. I take the food from the spoon, especially stuff like creamy desserts or ice cream, with teeth because tongue introduces a lot of saliva into the process and it gives me shivers. The less saliva on the food under my eyes, the better. Story 144. The way I tie my shoes, I first make a knot, then 2 little loops, and then tie the loops into a double knot. I don't know any other way. Couldn't fathom a loop-de-loop. Also, I taught myself this method. Story 145. I smell the inside of cups before I fill it up with a drink. If I don't like the smell, I change cups. Story 146. This reminds me of that live podcast where the guest talks about how he literally catches his poo before it hits the toilet water and then drops it into the water. The other people on it are totally WTF, and the guy gets super wide-eyed once he realizes that he's doing something truly crazy. Story 147. When I roll up to the drive-thru, I forthrightly proclaim, "Behold, hear ye, fasten thine chesticle straps upon these taint braids, and let us helicopter ourselves up to this chicken nugget boondoggle." Though I hear most people just say, "I'll have some chicken nuggets, please." Story 148. I hold my pencil spends differently than everyone I know. It's similar with how it's positioned with my thumb, but I rest the actual pen on my ring finger as opposed to the middle. I didn't notice until I was 22. Story 149. I learned this years ago, but apparently there's a left-handed way to fold sheets. I didn't realize this until I was in college and helping my neighbor with laundry. She was confused because I'm right-handed. Both parents are left-handed. I'm still occasionally surprised by things that are considered left-handed. Story 150. Took several years to learn not to put fabric softeners in my towels because they wouldn't dry me off as well. Quit adding fabric softener to my towels, and I get much drier now, much quicker after taking a shower. Story 151. I know how many steps are in my house and when to turn at the landing for one more step. So if I'm carrying a laundry basket, I always count. Most times I let my shoulder touch the wall for support. In my own home, of course. Story 152. I'm lefty, and it has been brought to my attention that I eat a seeded hamburger bun with the seeds top, away from me, so essentially upside down. Never noticed or realized this. Story 153. I wash my hair while I'm having a bath with the same Imperial leather soap I use for everything else. Only seems to work if I keep my hair short, no one all over, or it stays greasy. Apparently everyone else uses shampoo and conditioner. Story 154. Apparently, how I walk, everyone. My entire 38 years have said I walk on my tiptoes. I don't get it, but I have calves of steel, though. Story 155. La bise is not actual kisses on people's cheeks. It's just cheeks touching kissing sound. I learned that from people on Reddit after 25 years of doing it wrong. Story 156. Tying my shoes, had to teach myself from watching others, but never got it quite right when I was a kid. I know how to do it now, but after years of my way, it's just muscle memory. Story 157. When waiting in line for a train ticket machine, I use the time that I'm in the queue to decide where I want to go. Story 158. I tap the top of a pop soda can before opening it. No idea why. When I'm concentrating, I stick out my tongue. My brothers do it too. I brush my teeth in the shower. Story 159. I've always walked up any set of stairs on my tiptoes. As a kid, I didn't fully notice, but then as I got older, I became more aware of it and noticed when I walk up big flights of stairs, it feels like a mini calf workout. Everyone else I know has at least their toes and balls of foot on each stair, but I'm full tiptoe no matter how long the flight of stairs are. Story 160. I'm right-handed, but several family members are left-handed, so I do a lot of things left-handed, depending upon who taught me to do it. Some examples are tie my shoes, count cash, deal cards, etc. Also, my dad taught me to protect my writing hand dominant hand in an emergency. So even though he protected his left hand, I protect my right. So if I need to shield my face, smack something away from me, etc., I use my left hand. I did not know this was unusual. For some reason, coworkers in particular seem to notice this stuff. Story 161. I always throw the little plastic detergent cup in the washing machine with the clothes so it comes out nice and clean and ready to use again. I used to think everyone did this, but I've received a lot of surprise comments over the years, so I give my mom credit for putting me onto this as a kid. Story 162. When I hold bigger cups, I anchor my index finger inside the cup from the top. It's hard to explain XD. Story 163. I didn't know you were supposed to wash rice until my husband pointed it out. I'm in my 30s, and it just never occurred to me. I wash fruits and veggies, but somehow the super cloudy rice water didn't register as maybe this needs rinsing. I wash my rice now. Story 164. My whole life I wiped back to front, stuck my hand in from the front, reached back, wiped from the tailbone to the taint. Around 10 years ago, I was talking to my coworkers and it came up somehow and everyone thought I was a monster. I have since changed my ways as it makes way more sense to go in from the side and wipe front to back. Story 165. Most people tie their shoes backwards and have no idea why their knot comes undone. I can go several months without having a shoe untie. Story 166. Apparently, when men sit down, we're supposed to give our pants a short tug upward at the thighs. No idea what this is for and why. Story 167. I rub my hands together vigorously while using a hand dryer. Old models used to have labels instructing you to do this, so I always have, and my hands get dry way faster than if I don't do it. Story 168. I associate certain numbers of 3 digits as good, neutral, or bad based on how the numbers go together and whether they're odd or even. I mostly do this with identifying numbers, addresses, phone numbers, account numbers, etc. Examples of good numbers: 325, 325, 101, 102, 10, 11, 12, 369, factors of 3. I tend to think of even numbers are neutral and odd numbers as bad if they don't go together, but I prefer numbers with odd numbers of digits more than an even numbers of digits. Story 169. When using a squat toilet, I face the wall instead of the door. Recently found out that's the wrong way, and most people face the door. Story 170. Every day I take a sip of water, fling my head back, drop them in, swallow as I put my head down normal. I can't stand the taste, and this is my least contact version of consuming tablets. Yes, it may seem a little dramatic, but it works well. Story 171. Loading the dishwasher. I genuinely thought there was a universal correct way until I saw other people's kitchens. Story 172. I point my you-know-what to one side when I'm putting on trousers for convenience and comfort. I found out in work that not everyone does that. Story 173. Just discovered this morning at 37 years old that I actually don't intrinsically know my left and right without checking. I thought everyone checked, but apparently they don't. I tested my husband and he just knew. I genuinely don't. How do you learn something like that? Story 174. I can tune a straw inside out with my tongue and teeth. I can also tie a knot in a cherry stem with my tongue. Story 175. I tie my shoes bunny ear, bunny ear. I have no clue how to do it the way the rest of the world does it. Story 176. I didn't just learn how others do it, but when I eat fried mushrooms, I take the mushroom out of the breading. The breading stays on the plate. Story 177. Tying my shoes. I use the bunny method, create 2 loops and tie them together. I can do the other way, but generally don't. I don't know any other adult who still uses the bunny method. Story 178. I tie my shoes in kind of a weird fashion. I can't really describe it, but if someone sees me tie my shoes, they often comment on it. Story 179. My father-in-law gets in the shower, then turns the water on, waits at one side of the shower, and then gets under it when it's warm. I turn the shower on, then get in a few secs later when I know it's warm. I thought it was hilarious. Story 180. I hold my pinkies underneath the back end of a sandwich to keep it from drooping and dropping ingredients. My sister made fun of me relentlessly for this as a child until she understood the utility later in life. Story 181. At a part-time job in college, my coworkers and boss all teased me for still doing the bunny ears method of tying shoelaces. That was the method I learned as a kid, as I think many people did, and I didn't realize I was ever supposed to learn the grown-up way when the bunny ears method worked just fine. I still don't get it, but that whole scenario did motivate me to learn a completely different method, the 1-second method, out of spite. Story 182. I'm not from America Foy W, but whenever I heard the national anthem, I thought it said, "From the dawn surely light." Didn't even question it, TBH. Story 183. Me saying grocery instead of all y'all being like, "It's grocery, really? You go to the grocery store?" The people who work there are grocers and not grocers. You a bunch of Sean Connery looking and speaking moherfuckers. That's all. Story 184. When I count on my hand, I start with my thumb and count as others do, but little finger counts before ring finger. My brother always teased me. I count 1, 2, 3, 5, 4. Absolutely baffles people when they see it. Story 180 Vika. When I was a teenager, I was buttering toast one morning at my then-girlfriend's house, and she told me I butter toast weird. I still don't really know what I'm doing wrong to this day, 2 decades later. I just spread the butter across the bread where I think it needs butter. Story 187. I never knew you can take the basket out of the dishwasher that holds the utensils and carry it to the drawer to unload. Story 188. Peeling boiled eggs. Always peeled off part of the egg, white with the shell, until my niece, who was 14 at the time, told me I need to roll it around on the counter to separate the shell from the egg. A 14-year-old taught me such a simple trick. Story 189. Place pizza in pan, cover, and set to medium-high heat. Occasionally slide the pizza in the pan to prevent sticking. Heat until the cheese is melty and the crust is crispy. Story 190. I found out that I've been holding a pencil wrong my entire life when I write and draw. Before I learned to hold a pencil correctly, a few months ago I used to hold it like how an Italian would hold it. Answer. What's the Italian method? I am wondering because I recently copied how a Spanish teacher from an Italian art school holds his pencil when he is drawing, and it solved the only problem I had, not being able to draw nice circles. Mine were always flat in one quadrant, causing my C's to look like a very tilted L. Basically, I changed from resting my pencil above the tip of my middle finger and having my thumb and index on top of the pencil, to squeezing the pencil with my middle finger and placing my index finger above. Sometimes I place the ring fingertip under the pencil for support, but it is usually pressed up against my third finger. After the switch, I quickly realized the reason I was not able to draw circles was because I did not have the range of motion needed to move the pencil properly, and I was stretching to make a nice curve. But switching from 2-finger manipulation to 3-finger manipulation gave me the needed range of motions. All of a sudden, after 30 years, writing felt more natural than typing. I should have realized it earlier. I'm an engineer working with CMM machines that moves in XYZ. I should have recognized my holding was not allowing me move the pencil properly. Think of it as a Delta robot with one dead arm. I won't say my penmanship is freaking gorgeous today, but it's at least finally legible. Story 191. I just moved in with my girlfriend. Until now, I wasn't aware there was a wrong way to get margarine out of the tub. Story 192. I asked how that was possible, and he explained the logic of wearing things a few times before washing them, so long as there's not stains on them from the first wear. Can't believe I didn't figure this out sooner. Answer. I remember the time when I only washed jeans when they distended and got too big. Nowadays, my kid makes sure I wash everything I wear every single day. He's very thorough, drooling here, wiping his nose on my shoulder, a touch of dirty little hands on my knee, smearing banana all over my sweater, peeing on my foot if I dare try to put him on the potty. They warn you that having kids means doing more laundry. I didn't expect this to mean that I would need to wash my clothes 3 times as often. Story 193. I have a heavy, thick beard. For about a decade, I served in the U.S. military, and as such, was required to shave every day. I probably spent thousands on Gillette Sensor XL blades. I'd use one for about a week before my beard growth mangled it. At the risk of sounding like a fudge hipster, I now use a safety razor. My wife bought it for me about 3 years ago, and it's one of the best gifts I've ever been given. Had I known of these years ago, I would have saved incredible amounts of money. I spend pennies to the dollar on blades, and they last longer. Sometimes the old ways are the best. Answer: totally agree. I dislike the mock, insert number here. I'd always get razor burn from hair getting trapped between the blades, and an electric just doesn't work as well, and seem to pull hair out more than cut. I bought one of those as seen on TV safety razors that Rick Harrison, Pawn Stars, endorses for $20, and it's a fantastic product. The bottom handle has a screw point to lock in the razor if you get hair stuck, a quick twist and flick in water, and it's clean. And the blades last 3 times longer, at least over the Shoot modern razors. Story 194. I used to stand in the shower and suffer that first blast of cold water. Did not consider any alternatives until I saw my partner patiently waiting outside the shower for a few minutes until the water warmed up. Life-changing. I mean, as kid, learning to draw my own bath in the tub, and I was much too old than I should have been before I started to wash myself. My folks and I were all creatures of habit. I always checked it with my hand while it was filling, so I just extended that to a shower when I started taking those. Then again, maybe you went directly to showering and didn't have the prior experience. Story 195. Whenever I got the washing from the line, I used to take the pegs down too and put them in a basket. When I got married, I found my husband would always leave them sitting pegged on the line. At first it would irritate me, but then I thought about it. You don't have to always be reaching up and down and up and down. The pegs are already waiting on the line for you. It changed my world. Story 196. Knees up whilst pooping. Get a stool and elevate your legs and works like a charm. Fewer hemorrhoid problems, less straining, and much cleaner. Story 197. Your microwave has power levels, and they're super useful. Tired of having half your food on fire and the rest frozen? Hit that power level button. It cycles the microwave emitter on and off for a percentage of the cook time that you choose. This gives the heat time to diffuse throughout the food. Just remember to increase how long you cook it for, and voila! Trust me, your leftovers will thank me. I did not use my headphones correctly. I put them in the wrong ears, and then I saw that they were signed. I'm probably stupid. Story 199. I'm sure there's lots I'm not thinking of, but one is cleaning. It used to be so hard and take so long to do just one thing. But at some point, I realized that at least part of the reason is because I thought of cleaning as a negative thing. I'm not sure how to word that out, but cleaning was never fun and seemed like a drag. At some point, I quit thinking of it as a bad thing. It's good because it makes things look nice, smell fresh, etc. That change makes cleaning way more positive, and I get it done faster now. Story 200. Mixing natural peanut butter. Took me years to realize that if you store the jar in the pantry upside down, the oil rises to the bottom of the jar, making it a breeze to stir. Story 201. Story 202. Okay, look, it's not necessarily wrong, but I recently changed from a stand-up wiper to a sit-down wiper. I think stand-up wiping is more efficient, you get more poop out of your crack, but I realize sit-down wiping is better for me for one specific reason. I'm 6'2". I don't want my head poking over the stall when I'm scraping poop out of my jerk. Story 203. For years, washing laundry with liquid laundry detergent and the old soap sludge on around the little cap cup used to measure the detergent would build up and get nasty and get on everything. Then I realized I could just toss the cup into the washer too. Story 204. I am two-handed. Been using the scissor in my left hand for 20 years. Always struggled in school projects. Then my GF made me put it in my right hand. Turns out I am a god-tier scissor user. Cooking bacon. Apparently cooking it in the oven is the best way to cook it. Goodbye bacon grease splatters. My arms are no longer under siege whenever I want some bacon. All hail whoever figured that out. Story 206. Eating pistachios. I've only recently learned to use a shell to open the others without hurting my hands by wedging it open. Helps my salt addiction. Story 207. It was at least 25 years before I realized it's easier to sit down to pee in the middle of the night than it is to aim in the dark. Bonus, you can keep your eyes closed so you don't fully wake up. Story 208. Story 209. Washing my hair and drying my hair. Not necessarily doing it wrong, but my hair used to be constantly greasy even after showering, despite scrubbing my hair as much as possible to remove grease. One day I was hungover and had a shower, shampooed my hair, but forgot I did it and did it again before conditioning. My hair has never been cleaner. I even use half heat normal amount, so I'm not using too much shampoo and it works. And I used to just put my hair up in a towel without actually trying to get water out of it. This was mostly when I was younger, though. Answer. I recently discovered that I had been washing and drying my hair wrong for my hair type, which is wavy verging on curly. Watched a video about curly hair and it changed everything I do. Basically, 1, wet, wash, rinse, condition, etc. upside down, like bend forward so my hair hangs down. 2, shampoo mostly roots, condition mostly ends. 3, at the end of the shower while hair is still dripping wet, flip head over again and scrunch product through, focusing on hair ends. 4, gently scrunch dry with an old t-shirt, no wrapping in a towel. 5, use metal clips to encourage volume at the crown of the head. Just clip so it's not lying flat. 6, dry a section at a time with a diffuser. I make sure not to move the blow dryer while I'm doing it. Just place and wait. Dry only part way. 7, curl enhancing hairspray and air dry the rest of the way. Remove clips. It's a lot of steps and a bit of a pain, but it makes such a huge difference to my hair. I only wash it every 4 days anyway. Not sure why I felt compelled to write the whole thing out, but maybe it will help someone. Story 210. I'm not going to say specifically what I did, but I will accept responsibility for Reese's Peanut Butter Cups ending their No Wrong Way to Eat a Reese's campaign. Story 211. Story 212. Working at a psych hospital, I had to document ECT a lot for when patients with 4 ECT treatment. I realized a few months ago instead of etc., I would write ECT. I was mortified when I made the connection and noticed it in texts and emails I had sent out. I guess I was just in the habit of spelling that word and kept fudge it up. Story 213. I wear my socks inside out on purpose. The seam is on the inside and it puts a lot of fuzz on your toes and you can feel it against your toenail. Flip those bad boys inside out and you've got yourself a smooth sock. And with ankle socks, no one will ever know the difference. Story 214. Lol, I'm a nurse. Before I was a nurse, I was a nurse assistant. I shoot you not. I've been using bedpans 180 the wrong way for the better part of a decade like a moron. I now no longer spill pee and poop as often as before I had the revelation. Opening bananas. Not the stem end, the other end. Push the end between your fingers. Opens right up, never have an issue, and no more mashed ends at the stem. Monkeys and apes do it this way or some shoot. Story 216. Put the milk or cream into the cup before you pour in the coffee. That way you get about the same amount of cream every time and rarely end up with an overfull cup. Story 217. Bacon. Finally tried cooking it in the oven. So yummy, so easy, and no more sacrificing my shirts to the grease gods. Story 218. Sandwiches. I used to fold one bread slice in on itself instead of sandwiching 2 together like you're meant to. Story 219. Not recently, but in high school, I loaded the dishwasher for years by bending over and putting all the silverware in the silverware bin. Then one day a GF showed me that the silverware bin pops out so you can load it and then pop it back in.